Welcome to a very festive, Christmassy edition of Boba Joe Show.
Yeah, we're back with one of the biggest sequels, Christmas sequels ever made. We return to the world of Dying Harder.
You want to have
Part
much
2.
difficulty? Dying hard. 2.
Die with difficulty.
Die with difficulty. That's like the literal Japanese poster version. Die with difficulty.
I suppose we should explain the disclaimer bar running across the bottom of the screen for our viewers today.
Yeah, the network insisted on that.
Yeah, we just had to substitute some less family-friendly wording with some more family-friendly wording, just in case there's any kids watching today.
Otherwise, if you don't like swears, you got to close your eyes and just go like,
yeah,
fingers in the ears.
No doubt, a couple of swears will slip out, given past form here. But yeah, we're back.
Yeah, you'll hear all kinds of swears like Mr. Falcon and Melon Farmer and all sorts.
This is it, the Boba Joe Christmas special here.
Yeah, we did Die Hard one last year, so I saved this one for this year. We could have done it like the next week or next month, but no, just save it for next year.
Well, look, if the first movie can be considered a Christmas movie, then so can its sequel.
Might as well. Trying to get home from the holidays.
Yeah, in fact, it could even be, in a way, it's more Christmassy than the first movie.
Yeah, it's got the snow.
The environment, it's got the snow. There's a lot more jingly music and just general kind of Christmassy atmosphere going on, as opposed to
you got these Santa's little military helpers in the white overalls.
Yeah, classic little elves here in their little white overalls to help around the place. Yeah, Die Hard 2.
And there's a nice fire to keep you warm at Christmas.
Is this movie called Die Hard 2 Die Harder, or is that just like a European thing or a regional thing?
Well, I remember it being called out as a kid, but because Die Hard 3 was Die Hard with a Vengeance. And yeah, I remember it being advertised as like Die Harder.
Well, it'll be Die Hard 2 for today to keep things simple. When did you first see this movie? I think I saw it pretty soon after I watched the original for the first time when I was a kid.
Yeah, the first time I saw a piece of it was at my mum's house when I was a kid. We used to like rent movies regularly, but often there wouldn't be time to watch them. So they would set up two machines and play it on one and record it on the other. And then so I'd have time to watch them during the week. So I couldn't have time to watch them all in one weekend for the rental combos where you get, 5 or 6 movies. And I remember it was playing during the day and I walked through the room that it was like the extra kind of lounge stuff down the end of the house that was like a thicker carpet where it was like warmer in the winter and that. And it was playing on that TV with the sound down just so you could see because it was recording so you could watch it whenever. But that's the first time I saw some clips of it and I kind of stopped for a minute and just like watched it. I wasn't sure what it was. I just saw there was like snow and an airport and planes. And then I saw like McLean. I was like, oh, it's Die Hard 2. And there was no sound on and I can't remember if it was a school day or what I was doing. I just had this vague memory of it. But that was the first time I saw a piece of Die Hard 2. And it was the rental VHS, not the TV version. So, it was the proper movie.
Proper movie with all the violence and all the swearing.
Yeah. And some nudity, apparently, in this opening scene of this nutbar doing his martial arts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it drops us right in it as opposed to the first movie. I suppose we had a little bit of a setup, when we got to see the LA airport and McLean being picked up in the limo and all that stuff. But here we open up and he's at the airport. He's there to pick up his wife Holly, bring her home for Christmas. She still works for Nakatomi Corporation, is my understanding, and that's only something I twigged when I was rewatching that this week, but I'll talk about that later. So John, he's not having a good time here. He's after seeing that his car is being towed away, and it's not actually his car, it's his mother-in-law's car, so she's not going to be happy about that at all. And the cop on duty is just being an asshole. He doesn't care that, you know, McClane's like, oh, hey, look, I'm a cop too, and I used to actually work here in New York, and now I'm in LA. And the guy's like, yeah, well, I don't give a shit, and gives him the ticket and tells him Merry
Yeah,
Christmas, pretty much. So, yeah, real douchebag cop here who we're going to be seeing again on multiple occasions.
yeah, real
throughout this
brotherhood
movie.
in blue. He's like, just like, yeah.
But we cut to the interior of this hotel room where we see and can hear this news report talking about how this big time dictator from, do you know what country he's from, Johnny?
Double slobble muscle something Vania. I have no idea.
He is from Valverde, and we have
What's
dealt
that a
with
reference to?
Valverde before. So Valverde is also the same fictional country that Predator takes place in,
Oh, nice.
and it's also the same fictional country that Commando takes place in. So,
That's cool. I didn't
and
know that.
and I
I'm
always have
learning
known
something
about
there.
the Predator and Commando link. I always kind of noticed, but once again, this was another thing that came up when I was rewatching Die Hard 2
So
this
is
week.
this a Shane
When
Black thing who's come up with this?
it must be, but I just thinking, wow, man, Valverde, what a shithole!
Yeah.
All the bad things happened there, and it's obviously had like a couple of evil dictators now, because that guy in Commando who like kidnapped the girl like was like a dictator type dude, and now you have this like
I
big
just
time
imagine.
drug baron guy.
Yeah, it must be like in neighboring countries, like, you M Bison's over here, and I don't know. I think meeting in Thailand in the Street Fighter movie. Then over on the other side, we've probably got Latveria and Doctor Doom. There's just this whole like cornucopia of
Yeah,
evil dictators out there.
it's the access of evil with
Yeah,
Valverde, Latveria, and yeah, wherever the other places.
and the cast this time around, the actor, we'll get to see this general who's only on the TV monitor. We get to see him later in the film, but he's played by a very well-known Italian actor by the name of Franco Nero,
Franco Nero.
the original Django, before Tarantino did his name-inspired, otherwise sort of unrelated film. So Django had Franco Nero, directed by Sergio Corbucci, and he did a whole bunch of speedy westerns. And that other notorious 80s film, Enter the Ninja. That's where
Well, he's definitely very memorable in this movie. Like, he's very sinister. He's well cast as this deplorable ex-general drug baron from Valverde. And as you
he's a good
mentioned
character
briefly,
actor.
yes,
Yeah.
good character actor and a good
And
character
he's
in
still
this
going
movie.
now. He's still in movies this year.
And we see this guy, or I suppose our main villain. And as you mentioned, we do have some nudity at the beginning of this movie.
It's very gratuitous. Like, it adds nothing to the plot of the film.
So this guy, I was just checking his name again here. Yeah, Colonel William Stewart is the name of this guy. But he's not a nice guy. We see here he's watching the news reports, and he's, what would you say, doing some Tai Chi in the nude?
Yeah,
Like,
he's
what is he
doing
actually
like
doing?
either Tai Chi or kata type movements, some karate, whatever, in slow motion. Doing like, controlling your body, moving around, yada yada. And it's meant to be like he's got, I guess they're kind of showing he's got some kind of discipline or control. But as we get into the movie, we see that, like, these terrorist dudes seem to have all the plans, but they're not as in control of things as I'd like to think they are, thanks to a certain John McClane.
Funniest moment for this bit always is. He's totally naked and he's doing his Tai Chi stuff, and then once the news report is over, he does this quick about turn with the remote control and just points it menacingly at the television to switch it off. He's got the moves.
Maybe it was hot. I don't know. He just got out of the shower, I guess.
So yeah, we're introduced to our villain here, and we also get some moments interspliced now where we see John McClane kind of waiting around for Holly while we see these villains or these group of terrorists kind of gathering. They're all leaving their hotel rooms at the same time. They're all carrying what appear to be Christmas gifts, but I think we can suspect that there's possibly weapons or other nefarious items being concealed in the boxes that they're carrying. And
some good phone booth acting.
Oh, we got some good phone booth acting. I was just about to say, because John McClane, he gets a beep message on his pager, on his bleeper, asking him to call a number. So he finds a payphone here in the busy airport, and he calls the number, and the phone is picked up by his wife, Holly, and John is very surprised to hear her on the other side of the phone. He's like, "What the hell? I thought you were still in the flight. Have you landed already?" And she's like, "No, dumbass. We've got airphones. It's the 90s, remember?"
Like, it's so modern.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of references made here about, living in the 90s, and this is life in the 90s, where they'll actually use the word 90s, which, really, really dates the movie in a fun way.
Yeah, I like it at the time, though, because it is like, the first Die Hard was the tail end of the 80s, so it is like, it's bridged into a different era.
Oh yeah, Holly, she's letting John know that they're supposed to be landing soon, and he doesn't tell her what happened to the mother-in-law's car. He just kind of skirts around that, and he's like, "Look, how about instead of just going back to your parents' house, we just leave the kids with them and we go get a hotel for the night, get some room service, have a nice time." And she's like, "Oh, that's a great idea." And when I was watching this with my wife, I was like, they're just they're just deciding to randomly just leave their kids with her parents right there on
Yeah.
Christmas Eve. They haven't told their parents this yet, and they're just gonna fuck off to a hotel. They're gonna go to a hotel. It's like, and how are the little McLean children going to feel waking up on Christmas Day? It's like, "Where's mommy and daddy?" It's like, they weren't ours coming home. They just went and got a hotel. Um, sorry, little McLean children. Your parents are selfish. I'm only joking. I judge nobody. John McClane can do whatever the fuck he wants. Oh, and we see as well that there's a very charming older lady sitting beside Holly McClane on her plane, and that rhymed. And when Holly hangs up the phone, the old lady's like, "Oh, isn't technology just wonderful and all the things we can do these days?" And then she just randomly takes out like a taser from her handbag, and she's like,
Yeah,
"I used to always use mace to protect myself, but now I use one of these." And she's there
I
like
love that.
flashing the taser. Yeah, some taser time here will be coming up later on, crucial to the plot. So
So now we've got this little church that's on the outskirts. I think it's just on the outside or next to the airport.
yes, it's a neighborhood just right adjacent, I think, to the perimeter of the airport. We see very briefly, I think, it's possibly the only one-to-one proper face-to-face meeting between John McClane and the main villain. They briefly bump into each other when they're
Yeah,
both making their way to their various locations, and they kind of exchange backhanded pleasantries because John McClane's like, "Oh, don't I know you?" And he's like, "Oh," the colonel's like, "Oh, I've been on TV. I get that a lot." And they just kind of go their separate ways. And yeah, we see this old church with an old fella living there by himself, and a van pulls up. They kind of look like, electric workers or, water workers, local utility guys that are checking something in the area, and they knock on the door. They ask if they can check the pipe out the back, and the trusting old man, he lets them inside, and as they're kind of entering, he's given them a bit of a backstory of the place, and he's like, "Oh, this old church, it's due to be torn down next year, you know, and I'm just a caretaker, and you know, oh, it kind of feels like a piece of me is going to be dying with this place." And then one of the worker dudes like, "Yeah, you're right about that." And he just pulls out a silenced pistol and shoots the dude point blank. Really, really evil stuff going on here to begin. So yeah, the poor old man gets whacked, and yes, it turns out our two utility workers are in fact actually also with this terrorist organization or whatever the hell they are that are conducting these nefarious activities around the airport. So after that happens, we get a moment with John McClane. He's chilling out in one of the eateries at the airport. He's smoking a cigarette indoors, which always warms my heart to see people still being able to smoke inside back in the day. And he's puffing away, and he notices some suspicious activity going on at the table across from him. So we see a couple of the guys that were with the colonel earlier on, and once again they have these gift boxes that they seem to be very protective of, and they seem to be wary of the police that are walking around the airport. So John McClane immediately kind of spots them and sees that they're acting suspiciously, and he also notices when one of them you know, raises his arm to grab something, he sees that he's got a holstered gun under his jacket, which further raises his suspicions. So he goes over to two cops he sees to try and alert them, but when he taps one of them on the shoulder and he turns around, we realize it was the same dickhead cop we saw earlier at the start of the movie who gave him the parking ticket and had his car towed away. So McLean knows he's getting no help from this dude.
Yeah.
And we also, just before our first big action moment, we get this funny moment that me and you were kind of having a chuckle about earlier because of how it was censored for TV. But we get the moment where the colonel guy is noticed while he's walking through the airport by a TV news reporter who walks over, and she's like, "Oh, Colonel, can we get a word?" And he's like, "You can get two. Fucking you." Great line. Brilliant line. And the reason this reporter is actually in the airport along with a lot of high-ranking officials is because the drug baron who we saw in the news report earlier, he's supposedly been extradited to the United States, and his plane is going to be landing at this airport shortly for him to be handed over to the authorities. And because he's such a infamous criminal, there's a lot of news reporters and the like at the airport trying to catch a glimpse of the happenings as they're going down. So we're kind of
Yeah,
getting
he's
that
like
whole
following the
picture of
guys
what's
into the baggage areas, and he goes into like the employees' baggage area and finds out these guys are he's following them in and then they're up to more shenanigans.
Yes, we've got he watches them walk into an employee only area, and when he tries to follow them, the door is locked behind them. So he asks like a random, you know, janitor guy who's like sweeping the floors if he can unlock the door for him. And he also flashes his police badge at him, and he's like, "Look, get the airport police and tell them to come here." Doesn't bother telling the guy why he's asking them to do that, just gives him this really vague instruction. So the guy lets him in, and he goes inside the baggage handling area, and he comes across the two guys, and he's like, "Hey, you know, what are you doing here? You know, do you have any ID?" And the guys are like, "Yeah, relax, we work here." And he's like, "Well, show us your ID." So they pretend like they're going to take out an ID, but then they both pull guns and start
Do you keep
shooting
your?
at
I
him.
always keep my ID on inside of a jacket just for
Oh,
convenience. I'm
100%,
sure you do
yeah,
too. Yeah,
100%.
always keep it on.
I had to, like, it's weird things you kind of notice sometimes when you haven't watched something in a while. For the first time, I kind of noticed like how quickly these guys kind of drop their professional espionage routine and go straight to shooting guns at just some
It's
random guy who asked for ID. It's like, could you not have just
like
have gotten
watching
some fake
Cops when I was
IDs?
a kid. People just start shooting real quick.
Yeah, it's like you've gone to all this planning to, do what you're about to do, but you didn't get like a fake ID. Just get a fake ID, and
Yeah.
then the next time the cop asks who you are, you just go, "Well, I'm so and so, and I work at the airport." It would have been
And this
much
was
easier than
definitely a
shooting up the
different time
place.
because I don't think there's any security cameras in this whole baggage employ. Like in a modern thing, if you pulled out a gun, you'd be on a camera, there'd be a noise, there'd be on alert immediately.
Yeah, there seems to be like nearly nobody working the interior of this baggage place
Yeah,
either. Like it's literally just these guys, which maybe that's a little bit true to real life these days, because I know lots of people left those jobs during the pandemic and
yeah.
refused to go back to them because of the horrible conditions they're forced to work in. But that's a show for another time. So yeah, there's a big shootout here in the baggage area between John McClane and the two guys. And at one point, they split up. They try and take him on one at a time. And the first guy, the guy with the mustache, he gets got by John McClane. They're having a fight on one of the kind of conveyor belts, and John McClane ends up like crushing him in the roller. Pretty nasty way to go. And then with the second guy, they actually have a bit of an almost well, the guy has a few kung fu moves he's laying down on John McClane, but eventually J-Man gets the better of him, and he takes him out with like a bicycle. He knocks him down, and he almost has him caught, but then the guy manages to get away. Just as John's about to take off after him, the airport police catch up and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And John McClane's like, "Relax, dickhead. I'm actually a cop." But then he realizes that he's lost his ID in the kerfuffle, so he
Yep.
has no way to identify himself. So they end up arresting him instead.
Remember
Big
that I was that
misunderstanding.
famous guy from Nakatomi Tower the other end. It's
Yeah,
on the news
don't
for
you know
five
me?
minutes. He forgot about me. And now we get to see the Richard Thornburg guy on the same plane with Holly. And I always remember him as like that same dickhead from Die Hard 1 and Ghostbusters.
Yes, his two big
And he's pretty much
claims
the
to
same
fame.
character. That's the thing I like about it.
Yeah, he's great at playing an unlikable twat. He really nails the character. So yeah,
And
since
it's
our
true, this man still has no penis. It's true.
yeah, he still has no penis, still has no dick, and like a bad smell, he keeps on coming back. You can't get rid of him. So we find out that traveling on the same plane as Holly McClane, which once again rhymes. Yeah, our good old friend Mr. Thornburg's here. Um, we find out that there's actually a restraining order against Holly McClane he has granted because at the end of the first Die Hard, we saw that she punched him right in the face outside of Nakatomi Towers. So there's a bit of bad blood and a bit of history there between the two of them. So he's been ordered to stay, or she's been ordered to stay away from him so the flight attendants can't sit him too close to her, which is a relief to both of them, realistically, because he
Yeah.
probably doesn't want to be punched in the face again, and she doesn't want to have to sit beside who realistically is a complete slime bag, douchebag, rotten bastard.
He plays it so well.
He
He
plays it
just
so
hates us.
well. You really do. You really do. Um, so yeah, we got that moment of interaction, and Thornburg, he has no fans on the flight really because the air hostesses mentioned that he had previously done like an expose called "Bimbos of the Skies," which was really bad portrayal of flight crew and flight staff, so they hate him too. So once they find out that Holly McClane punched him in the face, they actually offer her free champagne for the rest of the flight. So that's a nice little upgrade for Holly McClane here, since she's now a hero among the staff
He's
here.
such a slime. I feel like working on like hard copy would be like too good. That'd be too classy for him.
Yeah, big time. He's not worth it. He's not even worth your local cable access TV news. But yeah, we see our guy from earlier who escaped McLean. He's reporting back to the colonel now at the church, and he tells the colonel, "Well, look, we succeeded in our mission to plant the device in the baggage area, but you know, one of our guys got killed." And the colonel, he doesn't care that the guy got killed. He says it's a minimal loss. He does, however, say that, you know, failure will not be tolerated. So he takes out his pistol and he points it right at the guy's forehead. And we think he's going to blow his brains out. But when he pulls the trigger, we just hear the click. So there's no bullets in the gun. And he's like, "If you ever fail me again, the chamber won't be empty." You know, he gives him a stern warning not to fuck up, you know. So this colonel, he's definitely a little bit unhinged and a bit of a psycho, it would seem.
Yeah.
Dude
Now we
pretty
got
much just
old,
stands there and says nothing.
and now we got another character in the film, Dennis Franz, good old Sipowicz from NYPD Blue.
Yes, yes. He's I think his name like Lorenzo in this movie, I think his name is. But
And is he
yeah,
meant to be like,
NYPD Blue.
and was he meant to be like the brother of the other guy or not? I can't
That's
remember.
right, yeah. They're either brothers
Because like from
or
behind they look pretty
cousins.
similar. It's like,
Yeah, it's Captain Carmine Lorenzo is the name of his character in this
yeah,
movie.
that's it.
I was just looking it up there. Yeah, feels like he's played very close to that character he plays in the show as well. He's just fired up. He's angry, and
He might turn around and show you his bare naked ass at any moment. So you'd never know.
he's dropping lots of F-bombs and really just giving it to McLean. He's like, "You've shot a guy in my airport, and what the hell is going on?" You know, doesn't care about McLean's celebrity status from his previous
Yeah, I
exploits.
love that he's just like coming on all high and mighty. Only cares about sort of the politics, not about like what's actually going on in real life right now.
Yeah, all he cares about is the fact that it's Christmas Eve. He's a lot of people coming through the airport. He doesn't want any disruption. McLean's like, "Oh, but you know, you got to seal off the area so you can like check for evidence and see what those guys were tampering with." And he's like, "I'm not sealing off anything. Like, I'm not bringing any disruption to the airport. The only disruption that's happened so far is the one you've caused when you shot a guy in the baggage handling area. So I'm
I
not going
feel
to
like
do
if
anything
someone
you
walked
say."
in and died in his office, he probably just put a blanket over them, go back to work, and be like, "Da da da,
Yeah,
don't care, I'm busy."
yeah, he just does not want to know at all. And he even speculates that the two guys that McLean came across were probably just two punks stealing baggage, which, you know, does not fly with John McClane
Why
at
would they
all.
have to go into the employees era? Couldn't they just steal it from the normal carousel where there's baggage everywhere in the airport?
McLean, you know, he's trying to say, but look, they were carrying these Glock guns, and you know, they were look professional. But yeah, Lorenzo, he's having none of it. So McLean's like, "Fuck this." He makes his way out to one of the help desks in the airport, and he asks the very attractive young lady working behind the counter if he could use the phone, and he pulls his good old buddy from the first movie, Sergeant Al Powell, who's sitting behind a desk eating Twinkies as he's known to do. And John, he asks Powell if he'd do him a favor because he has a bit of a suspicion that something bad's going down at the airport. So he asks the lady at the airport counter to fax him over some fingerprints, which he'd already kind of pulled off the body of the dude um, that he shot in the baggage handling area. So sends the stuff over to Powell, who I'm only noticing
Yeah,
here looking at these
I
screens.
think he burnt
He's
his
got the
bridges with Sybil Shepherd and that detective agency, so he wasn't getting any help from them anymore. But I'm glad
yeah,
they
and
got
he's
Al Powell again. He's such a like lovable character in the film. You just want to like hug him or something. He's such a friendly, good person.
see he's got his big hand cannon holstered there as well that we saw at the end of the first movie. He's
Is he
got
the
us
same dude that's
by
in
his
Family
side.
Matters? Isn't it?
I think so. He's in like Turner and Hooch and stuff, isn't he? He's
He's
like
in a lot. There's a lot. I know he's in loads of films. So let's check.
But to the best of my knowledge, this is the last Die Hard film we're going to see him in. Yeah, like that's like one thing I got going a little bit off tangent a bit, but this, like we've
Yeah,
got
he's the
obviously
Family
John
Matters dude.
McClane.
I thought so. Yeah. Sorry.
So we got Al Powell returning, we got Holly McClane, and we got Thornburg. So we got like 3 characters from the first movie all return for the sequel, alongside John McClane, of course, who's also like there as well. So it's nice that they managed to find ways to work them in. Especially Powell, like, because obviously he's not at the airport. You don't really need to have him there, but it was a good way just to kind of have another little moment between him and John. And Powell agrees to run the fingerprints through their database and like the Interpol database and all this stuff to try and find out what's going on. So after he hangs up the phone to Powell, though, we get a little bit of flirtatious activity between the lady behind the counter and John McClane. And John, he has to let her down easy because she wants him to go for a drink with her after she gets off shift, but he has to point to the old wedding band and let her know he's a taken man, and there'll be no festive activities between the two of them tonight, unfortunately.
Yeah, we have to wait till those
Unfortunately for her.
sequels when he doesn't have his wife anymore.
Yeah. So we cut back to the plane, and Holly is enjoying her free champagne while getting glared at by Thornburg, and we get the kind of moment where the pilots are getting news that there's a very bad storm front heading in, and it's going to be causing havoc with the flights for a while. So there may be delays with some of the landings. And after we've been told that, we cut back to Al Powell. He's reached out to John. He's ran the prints through the system, which was very efficient, back in the 90s, clearly, because he got back to him
The
really
old
quickly.
faxes were so annoying the way they would roll out so slowly.
But yeah, it turns out this guy, the dead guy, was already dead. It turns out, he has the like prints and identification of someone who was supposedly killed years before, which raises more questions and suspicions on John's side.
There's nothing suspicious about that. It's all legit. It's all above board.
So John, he immediately wants to take this information to the top airport authorities, and he's making his way there when all of a sudden he's recognized by the news reporter that we saw earlier. And just like the Colonel was earlier, John McClane is also kind of rude to her, and he kind of fobs her off and more or less tells her to get the fuck out of his way while he goes up to the main control tower. And we see here there's a couple of extra characters we're going to get to see a little bit throughout this movie. So there's the actual head air traffic controller guy. I guess he's like the what would you say, like the head of the airport or whatever, like the
Yeah,
I'm
pretty
looking
much.
actually here.
Looks
The
like a
flight
Kruger
director.
industrial smelting looking kind of dude. I mean, it's not that active. It just reminds you of that kind of starchy soup bald man.
Yeah, so we've I'm just looking up his name. So it's Ed Trudeau is the kind of tough talking Southern flight director, and then we've got Leslie Barnes, who's the chief engineer. He's the guy who knows all about the radios and the radar setup and how to land the planes safely and that. So John McClane, he bursts in and he's like, look, we've got major problems, and I just got the facts back from my guy who says that this guy I shot earlier is supposedly dead already, and what's going on here. And they're about to tell him, look, take a walk, get out of here. Lorenzo was there as well. He's like, look, McClane, we just don't need any of your shit. Just get the fuck out of here. You're causing trouble. And just as they're about to have him removed, all of a sudden, all the lights go out. All the runway lights are switched off. All the radio communications are switched off. And they get a call through from the colonel who says that he has disabled pretty much all the equipment that will allow the planes to land safely at the airport. And he has complete control over the system, and he will not release control until after the plane that's carrying the drug baron guy has landed safely, and he's allowed to be escorted safely away from the airport. So, or off the plane at least. And so he makes this demand and tells them, they have 2 minutes to say that they agree and that they cooperate. So all of a sudden, John McClane's worries are confirmed, and turns out, shock horror, he was right to be suspicious of the two dudes, and there is something really big going on here. And now, of course, we have the extra jeopardy of, we've got a lot of planes in the air that are running low on fuel. They need to land. How are we going to get this situation resolved? And also on one of the planes, we've got Holly McClane, who's John McClane's wife. So it's really adding to the jeopardy that's just been unleashed upon
Yeah,
us.
stakes are high.
Stakes are high, big time.
It's pretty impressive. They set up their own mini duplicate air traffic control center and have all the equipment, which they could have got ahead of time, but then they set it up pretty fast. So it's probably slightly unbelievable, but it works for the scene, and we see them like hacking into some of the lines and cables and stuff too in that earlier scene. So they have truly taken over control. They've blinded the planes. Without them in the main control center, the planes are flying blind.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, they're not maybe the best at planning, as we found out when they just totally lost their shit and started shooting at John McClane earlier. But yeah, they definitely have efficiency and they have access to equipment to get the job done. And when
You
we cut
definitely
back
get the
to
sense they're military, like they're not just like a bunch of schlubs. They're organized. They've got like a work ethic.
Yeah, they're definitely on the ball when it comes to setting up all this stuff to instigate the plan. And even when it cuts back to the air traffic control center, you've got all these kind of head honchos trying to discuss what can be done, and they're all trying to come up with ways to see if they can reestablish communication, and they're all kind of drawing blanks onto what could be done. So we get a
Get
moment
Batman. He's
where
got that bat wing. Maybe he can get up there and use his radio.
we definitely need some, and that's funny you should say Batman, because I think at one point one of the guys suggests that maybe if they got large kind of spotlights and shone them on the runways, they could use the lights to guide in the planes. And then
Not in the snow.
Leslie's like, oh yeah. Leslie's like, where are we supposed to get these lights from? Batman?
Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, it's not a bad idea, but you would need like super high, powerful ones. The problem is being snowy, snow coming down, like fog, light just refracts and goes everywhere and be pretty useless.
And also, I think the guy Leslie also mentioned they'd probably just shoot them out. So it's
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. But yeah, so Lorenzo and the air traffic controller, the chief engineer, and a load of other important airport people, they go to have a meeting about what's going on, but
I love a good meeting.
They exclude John McClane. It's like no civilians allowed. They close the door on him.
We can't have problem solvers in a meeting. Meetings are for time wasters.
So John, he decides to take matters into his own hands, and he wants to kind of find out what's going on. And they had sent him away in the elevator to go just get escorted out by security. But he's in the elevator with the reporter, and he's like, "Look, I'm getting out of here." He hits the emergency stop, and he crawls. He goes to crawl out into the elevator shaft, and she's like, "Wait, before you go, can I just get a couple of words?" And he's like, "Yeah, fuck off." Or joke you if this was the TV.
You feel kind of bad because she's not like a bad reporter. She's just like someone doing a job. She's not a bad person or anything.
Yeah. She's really getting she's just getting the two fingers in the face all day from anybody she's tried to ask questions to. Even the kind of officials she tried to interview earlier at the start of the movie wouldn't even answer questions. So she's just having an awful day, this reporter. But yeah, John, he he's making his way through the bowels of the airport. It's pretty funny, this stuff. You know, they're I guess he doesn't have any cooperation from the authorities, so I suppose he has to maybe go a roundabout way to get around. But I just thought
Yeah,
this
like the
was
James
just
Bond style or Bourne.
yeah,
Valor.
it felt like the producer, the director, they just wanted moments where he was climbing in air shafts or
Yeah,
climbing in
yeah,
pipes and
climbing and
doing
stuff.
shit.
It makes me think of like Goldeneye and that, and
Yeah, yeah. It's just like we have to put him in a tight, uncomfortable, tense
yeah,
situation at all times.
airport's big and open. We need a confined space to remind us of those first movie moments.
Yeah, he's working his way through the airport underground, and he comes across what appears to be like a little office area with a record player playing. And when he goes to turn off the record, a guy comes up behind him and he quickly gets him up against the wall and puts a gun to him. But the guy reveals that he's actually just the janitor,
Yeah,
and he's
supposedly.
like the caretaker, and I guess he kind of lives there as well because he's all his kind of personal effects set up. So McLean's able to use this guy to kind of like help him out and show him maps of the airport and lots of potential areas that
At least one person works on this mammoth behind the scenes airport.
yes, yeah, we're pretty low on staff, it feels like, at the airport in general. Um, it's also mentioned, or it had been mentioned by the engineer Leslie, that there is a chance they can set up one of the airport beacons at another end of the airport to send radio transmissions so they can warn the pilots in the air. So they decide to send him and a SWAT team to that part of the airport where the beacon is, so we can do some engineering work on it and get that transmission set up. However, the when Leslie and the SWAT team are making their way to that area, they are ambushed by the T-1000s and some other terrorist dudes. I'm pretty sure it is that guy. It's Robert Patrick, isn't it? That's one of the terrorist dudes. He or like the army dudes. He definitely looks like him. Let me just double check here. It has to be him.
I
Maybe
was
not.
looking at
I
the
don't know.
airport there because it says Washington Dulles International Airport. So I never knew
Yes, it
what airport
is.
it was taking
It is.
place
It's
in.
Robert.
It is
It's
Patrick. Yeah,
It is. It's Robert Patrick. He's just one of the
nice.
random terrorists here. I suppose this would have been like the year before T2, so he hadn't had
Mhm.
the big moment yet. So here he is anyway. He's one of the guys shooting his little submachine gun. The SWAT team here, by the way, get absolutely decimated. They're totally caught on the hop. Um, the evil army dudes just shoot the absolute shit out of them. It's only towards the very end of the massacre that McLean manages to show up on time from climbing his way through the vent, and he kind of jumps down and gets off a few shots with
The
the
SWAT
Beretta
team
and
should have went
kills a
through the
few
vent
guys. Exactly.
instead of
Um,
walking down an alley and just getting shot to pieces.
yeah, and we get some nasty deaths where I think one of them McLean knocks like a load of scaffolding down on one of the guys, and he pretty much gets crushed to death. And yeah, McLean, he manages to take out these professional army dudes using just his Beretta pistol, even though
Yeah,
they're
it's the
armed with
handgun.
like submachine guns. So, but he can do it. He can do it all. We see here fucking Pornberg is just being a pest. He's continuously leaning over the chair where Holly is sitting, trying to look out the window because everybody on the plane is starting to get antsy, like they were supposed
Look
to
at the
land
size of those
ages
chairs
ago.
that don't exist anymore on airplanes.
Oh yeah, it looks so comfortable. I was
Looks like
actually
a real chair.
I was saying to my wife actually how generally pleasant both the flights and the airport itself seem to be. Like it's supposed to be this busy rush hour Christmas, but compared to these days, it seemed like a much more
Mm.
pleasant airport experience. Like apart from the whole terrorist activity going on, like the
And
airport
apart from
didn't
that,
seem so bad.
still, I would
But
take
yeah,
if you give me back the big seats. I wouldn't be so bothered if there's terrorists going on. I'd be like, well, I've got the comfortable seat. I don't care.
so we see here in the aftermath of the SWAT team massacre and John McClane's rescue of Leslie that Leslie got wounded, so he's bandaging up his arm, and they come across a walkie-talkie that's been discarded or possibly just left by one of the dead terrorists. And they can hear the transmissions going back and forth between, the colonel and his team, but they can't actually trace where the transmissions are coming from because it's a scramble and you need like some code to input it in order to find that stuff out. I'm not a radio guy, so I don't understand. So I just
Yeah.
take it at face value that what the guy is saying.
Press the button and it does stuff. That's what I know about them. Brief times I've used them. And you got a frequency and you turn the daily dialy thing and you got to be on the same frequency as the other one. And if it's not, then you just get a bunch of squawking noises.
So, we find out that the colonel is not too happy about what happened with the whole attempt to rig the beacon up as a second radio, and he's also disappointed to find out that several more members of his team have been killed by John McClane. So he decides to punish the airport authorities, and he does this by taking control of the communication system, and he readjust the kind of altitude level that's been put out by the beacons to show like the he kind of convinces them basically that the sea level is not what it is, and he
Yeah, you got like the
tells one of
artificial
them,
horizon and the ground level so they can
yes,
land or take off. And if that's not right, there's some big trouble.
yeah, and so I think he puts it out by like minus 200 feet or something. So he directs the plane, or he contacts one of the planes. It's like I think it's supposed to be British Airways, but they can't call it British Airways. It's called like
Mm-hmm.
Crown Travel or something shit like that. It's one of the pilots though is good old Irishman Colin Meaney doing an
Yeah,
English accent,
O'Brien.
and so he guides the plane in to the runway, but
There he is,
unfortunately
blurry
for
red face there, O'Brien.
yeah O'Brien just he's like, well, bloody glad just to be getting back. He's just trying to
He
do his
doesn't have a
best
good run with
dodgy.
planes. Remember in Con Air, he had another run with the
That's right.
planes.
That's right. Yeah. Bad luck.
That's
But
probably why he
yeah,
ended up in the
he's
space station. Didn't want to be on an Enterprise. It's like no more things that move around, just things that stay stationary.
yeah, I just want to fix things now. I don't want to pilot anything anymore or drive anything. But yeah, so the poor Colin Meaney and all the crew and passengers, because we do get a brief moment where we see like the English flight attendant telling everybody that the plane's going to land, and they're all very happy, and she's telling the kids to get back in the seat, and there's an
Yeah,
old woman who's like, "Oh, I'm so glad that the plane is
and
finally
it's
landing."
nighttime in a snowstorm, so they're relying on the instrument tools and the normal landing lights. Without those two things, you're fucked.
Yeah, definitely. And the flight attendant's like trying to console the old lady. She's like, "Don't worry, love. We're just like British Rail. We're late, but we'll get there in the end." I guess that was you know, a poignant joke at the time. I hear British Rail are still shit anecdotally though, so some things never change. But yeah, look, catastrophe ensures because they've got the wrong landing information, and the plane crashes directly into the runway in a big fiery display. And poor John McClane, he had tried to get there in time to try and do something, but there was nothing that could be done. Plane
No,
crashes
who
and
likes to be
burns.
roasting marshmallows? It's not the right, not appropriate at all.
Yeah, we've got lots of flame grilled passenger and crew here, unfortunately, on this plane. No survivors, and the colonel gets back in the radio and he's like, "I hope you've learned your lesson now, and you know not to try and interfere any further in my plans." So
They definitely
John
go full
McClane,
movie explosion because in real crashes, things tend to tear apart. They don't just spontaneously combust unless there's something actually combustible that ignites.
he's obviously totally distraught about what's happened. He feels somewhat responsible that he couldn't stop it from happening, even though there's really nothing he could have done in the
No, not at this
situation.
stage.
So things are starting to get really panicked now. There's multiple planes that are running low on fuel, and at one point we see on Holly's plane, she even kind of mentions to one of the flight attendants, she's like, we've been in the plane air now for a lot of hours more than we were supposed to. Is there enough fuel? And the air hostess is like, oh, of course, like the They always plan for these type of things, but she has this look on her face like she's totally lying, and Holly McClane can also
Yeah,
see that
yeah.
she's lying. So
I don't
this
know what
makes
the
her
actual
even more
capacity is,
nervous.
but like I remember one time flying from Perth to Melbourne, and Melbourne gets frequent thunderstorms, and often you can't land. Just like this movie, you're just circling, circling. Like we got to the end of the flight, and we circled for nearly 90 minutes one time, and I was thinking, man, I hope they've got plenty of fuel. It's not like Die Hard 2.
Is that be the type of thing that would make you quite nervous if you're in the situation?
But I
And
imagine they have to have a certain amount of reserve on big planes.
Thornburg here, he's like a rat. He can smell something's going on, and he goes back into the rear end of the plane where one of his camera crew guys is sitting. They must have been on the flight together, and he's like, "Hey, look, you still have the receiver in your hand luggage?" And the guy's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Look, will you tune it into the cabin frequency? I want to hear what's being talked about in there." So he's able to tune it in, and he starts getting the scoop basically that there's something seriously wrong at the airport, and that the storm is not the only reason that the planes aren't able to land. And we see now back on the ground that the airport authorities have finally decided to call in some extra help. So they've called upon the US government, who sent like the military in. They've sent in this like crack team. Um,
John Amos, he'll
this
save the
guy,
day.
yeah, I was just trying to look up his name there. Yeah, John Amos. But yeah,
There's
he's
so many, isn't like hundreds of films, man. You see him like
yeah,
in
he's in
everything.
loads of stuff. And he's great in this as well. It's too bad it will turn out the way it's going to be for him, because he's actually quite a likable character. And
Yeah.
McLean, he's like, "Look, McLean, you got some serious balls doing what you've done so far, but look, leave it to us now. The professionals are here, and we're going to take care of business." And
Yeah, there's one
he,
one thing I
yeah, go
like
ahead, sir.
before we get into the next scene here is the people that don't want to help McLean are all kind of like a higher pay grade, and they're like, "Oh, you're wasting our time, and get out of here, and you're an idiot, you don't know what you're doing." The people that do help him are all like working class, like the Reggie guy and the janitor guy and the guy that's showing them the communications and the maps, and they're all, and it kind of reminds you like McLean's that like working class hero who gets like paid jack shit and saves the day, in contrast to all the, the big Stallone and Schwarzeneggers, being commandos and predators and Rambos and all that. He's not a Marine. He's just a general cop.
Exactly. Yeah, and he really is a John Everyman. He just
Mm,
he gets on well with the little people, not like these top tier guys who just fucking are arrogant and think they know better than
yeah,
everybody else.
I think they played up quite well in this film without like
Yeah,
knocking over the head with it.
but the major tells him, not to worry, because he used to serve with the colonel, and he taught him everything he knows. So he knows his
that
next move
that shirt
almost
is so
before he does.
starched, and that beret is perfect, so I trust everything he says.
Oh, 100%. This is a man of authority who should be listened to at all times.
Yes.
So all this kind of running about and hustle and bustle is going on, and while this is happening in the background, Leslie, he's been kind of stewing and studying what's been going on, and he's looking at kind of maps, and he's trying to basically deduce where these guys could be set up, and he comes to the conclusion that they have to be somewhere either on the grounds of the airport or somewhere very close by to the airport. So he kind of calls McLean over, and he's like, "Look, I think that somewhere in this neighborhood adjacent to the airport that these guys are set up," because he says a lot of the old signal cabling and kind of general utilities kind of run through that area. So if you were going to patch into the system, it would be a good place to do it from, and you'd be as close to the airport as possible for conducting your nefarious deeds. So John agrees with him, and they both seem to be pretty certain that the signal or the control is coming from that neighborhood. But we cut back to the interior of Holly's plane, and we see now that Thornburg and his equipment guy, they've fully tuned in on the frequency of the cabin, and they know now that there's some type of bad stuff going on the ground, and that everybody's in a panic, and that the military have been brought in. So he asks his equipment guy to make sure he's recording everything that they're receiving, you know, on the receiver, just because he's obviously already planning on making some fucking news report out of it if they get out of the situation. So he's just kind of sleazing around the plane, and the flight attendants are trying to ask him to get back in his seat, but he won't do it. And, you know, he's just being a general pain in the arse as only he can be, you know, trying to get his scoop here. And we see as well, back in the operations center in the church, that the colonel is giving a bit of a pep talk to his men, and telling them that they're getting quite close to accomplishing their goal. And just at that moment, they get word that the flight that our good old drug baron pal is on, it's on its way in, and they should be arriving shortly. So things are all on the move here at Dulles Airport.
Yeah, we'll get on to the next little bit of events. Yeah, I love all that where they shoot all the cool scenes here too, with all your exteriors and the snow and the fog, and the interiors, all this like red lights and stuff, like lighting up, like, I don't know, Escape from New York kind of style, and that it's like, it's very moody.
We see as well that on the flight that the crooked drug baron general is on, he manages pretty much to commandeer the plane single-handedly. He chokes out the guard that's watching him after asking for a light of a cigarette or a cigar. He chokes him out with his handcuffs. He manages to disarm him. He gets into the cabin. He shoots one of the pilots, and then the other pilot's like, well, you know, you can't shoot me because I'm flying the plane. And the general guy's
Yeah,
like, oh no, don't worry about it. It's not your
I love
problem. And he
that.
just shoots him in the head, because it turns out he actually knows how to pilot a plane. So
Yeah, it's like funny that being like military trained unit, they got different specialities. I
however,
do love it.
it's not going to be that smooth a flight, because
Yeah,
when he shot the first pilot, he actually damaged some of the instruments. So he needs to be verbally given, you know, instructions on how to land. So you know, the colonel, he's receiving all of this, so he's going to help him out, and they're going to arrange for an alternate runway to be lit up and opened up for him, so the general can land his plane in as safe a fashion as possible. And while all this is going on, John McClane is able to listen in. And the reason he's able to listen in is because the janitor guy he met earlier, he had actually found the coat of one of the dead terrorists that John McClane had capped
nice.
earlier on. And in that coat, they actually had a walkie-talkie that didn't have the scramble mode on. It had the code put into it. So now John McClane is able to listen in on all the terrorist chat, and he's able to work out what runway the plane's going to be landing on. So he asks old Marvin just to help find him the quickest way to that piece of runway through the underground of the airport, and he's going to try and make his way there and see if he can help the situation.
Yeah, guerrilla style, taken by surprise.
And we got a great moment here where the general, he does just about manage to land the plane, not before almost running over John McClane, who has made his way through the underground and is going to try and go up like a service duct. But the grate on top is quite heavy, and he's having difficulty kind of pushing it up, and he's kind of got his body halfway out, but he's almost crushed by the plane. He's just about able to move out of the way before the tire of the plane rolls over the you know, the grate that he was trying to climb out from under. I always found that scene very tense when I watched it the
That's
first
such a
couple of
nail
times.
biting scene, man. It's like
And I think a lot of people would be kind of thinking, oh man, don't try and go up, just see if you could drop down. You'd nearly like think like, oh, I'd probably rather fall down the ladder and like break my ankle than try and lift myself up in time to not be squashed by the plane.
Yeah.
It's definitely a tense moment. But anyway, he narrowly avoids getting squashed, and the general lands the plane. And as the general gets out the door of the plane, he's like, oh, finally, freedom. And then he just gets punched in the face by John McClane, who had ran up alongside the plane. So John McClane, he pulls a gun on him and he's like, you're under arrest, you're going nowhere. And the general's like, who are you? And John McClane's like, I'm a cop. And the general's like, a cop? Like, he can't believe that it's just some
Cop, you
random
idiot.
cop. Yeah, he can't believe that some random police officer has been the
Yeah.
one to kind of foil his escape. But just as we think McClane's going to get the better of him, the colonel and his men show up and they start opening fire on the plane, and the general is able to escape. And before the guys all make off, the colonel and his men, they stand outside the cockpit of the plane where John McClane has locked himself inside, and they're like, the colonel's like, well, McClane, you're quite the man, you're quite the little soldier, so it's only appropriate that we give you a military funeral. And he gets all his guys to take all their grenades. I believe they have 3 grenades each, and he orders them to just chuck them into the
Yeah.
cockpit and chuck
Into the
them on the
plane.
plane.
So good.
So McClane, he's pretty fucked because he's been locked in the
This
cockpit.
is
He
the
doesn't know
harder
how to
part of
get
the
out.
dying hard.
Oh yeah, this is really dying with difficulty right here. So he has the quick thinking thought to strap himself into the pilot's chair and use the emergency eject button to get himself out of the
This was
jam. And
what
of
was in the
course,
teaser trailer for the movie, was him, this explosion of him just floating up into the sky. And on the trailer, you didn't know what the hell was happening, just that he's like going flying up into the sky.
it's a great special effect for the time as well. It was really good. And of course, we get to see the oh shit as he's
Yeah.
coming back down before the parachute deploys. And we even see one of the colonel's men remarking, "He's like that lucky bastard," because he's watching them. And he is lucky. Like, it's a 1,000,000 to 1 shot to be able to escape a situation like that. And
Yeah.
I will mention briefly. I said I had, Holly McClane. She's still working for Nakatomi. We can actually see that while she's on the plane, she's been looking. You have a nice little screenshot here. The folder I believe she's looking at has that Nakatomi Towers logo on it, so she still must work for the company in LA. So I thought that was a nice little Easter egg in the movie. I'd like to
Oh,
think
nice.
that she actually got promoted and got Mr. Takagi's job after he was
You would
assassinated
hope
by
so.
Hans Gruber. Hopefully she got a
You ever
nice
play
pay
that?
rise.
Sega did a video game that wasn't actually a Die Hard game, but it became known as Die Hard Arcade on the arcades and Sega Saturn. But it
Yes.
was just like a reskin of a beat 'em up game, and that's in the Nakatomi Tower again. But it had like Virtua
Cool.
Fighter kind of moveset. And it was a really fun beat 'em up game, like in 3D and that. It was a true 3D game, but it was funny because I used to actually have it on Sega Saturn, and I only found out years later. I think it was Dynamite Decker was like the real name of it before they reskinned it for the American market and gave it the Die Hard brand, as well as, and then we got that PlayStation one, of course, the Die Hard trilogy.
Yeah, I love Die Hard Trilogy, and I especially love the Die Hard 2 portion of Die Hard Trilogy when you were playing with the light gun.
Yeah, like first person shooting and that. It's cool.
Namco Gun Con. So yeah, we see as well on Holly's playing Thornburg, who's still making a nuisance of himself. He's been listening into the cabin conversation now for a while, and they've gotten word about what's going on the ground, and they're trying to placate the passengers who are starting to get quite panicked and antsy about what's going on. So the captain's like, "Oh, look, well, we're kind of over Washington. Why don't you tune in the TVs there? We'll pick up the TV signal and they can just watch TV to kind of
Yeah, let's see what's
pass
on
some
TV.
time." It's funny though, because obviously that's a terrible idea because there's now a news report going out about how the fucking airport's being taken over by terrorists and flights are being like fucking crashed out of the sky, and Yeah, great way to fucking panic
That's the
your
worst time to
passenger.
watch a TV.
Yeah.
Go watch Leslie Nielsen and Airplanes, and that's much more relaxing.
So yeah, all is not good on the plane, and the presence of Mr. Thornburg is only making things worse because he's just sleazing around and annoying everybody and
Like,
pissing everybody
maybe
off.
think when you say sleazing around, like he's got like some kind of slime or ectoplasm or something from Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
sleazing around.
But as I mentioned earlier, the engineer Leslie had kind of deduced somewhat that the signal was coming from that neighborhood beside the airport. So him and John have been kind of driving along and checking out houses, and so far they've had no luck. But they finally happen upon the old church, and John sees one of the guys patrolling outside it, and he reckons it's that guy. He's not just some random guy taking a walk. He's obviously like a guard, and he's on lookout duty. So John he decides to go over and try and take the guy out, and we do get a bit of a we get a funny moment where Holly she goes to page John McClane just as he's sneaking up on the guy, so his little beeper pager thing goes off, which alerts the guy that he's sneaking up behind him, and they get into a big tussle, and it is a pretty big tussle. It's pretty loud, but none of the other guys inside the church at any
Yeah.
point notice all the noise going on outside or ever come out to see
I
what's
feel
going
like this is
on.
like that Metal Gear Solid or 24 moment. It's like, I'm making too much noise. The guys are, I'm going to get caught. No.
But it's pretty funny because we first of all we got Leslie. He phones the airport headquarters. He's like, "Look, me and John McClane, we found the location of the guys there," and he tells them where it is. And just as Lorenzo is writing down the address, it gets snatched by the major guy. He's like, "No, no, don't worry. We're going to take care of this. We're going to go to that location and deal with it." And then in the meantime, we see John, who's still been fighting with the kind of security sentry. They get into a scuffle, and the guy is trying to stab him with a knife. So John, in a moment of desperation, reaches towards an icicle that's dangling on the wall
Oh, yeah, that
beside
was
where
good.
they're fighting, and he stabs the dude right through the eye with it. It's a really, really nasty death.
And then later it'll
And
melt and be like, how did it happen? We don't know.
and even John McClane himself goes, "Ugh," after he looks at the guy after stabbing him. So even he's kind of acknowledging, like,
Yeah,
"Oh man, that was pretty damn violent."
yeah, it's good.
You know what I just did to you.
I do
So
like a
yeah,
nice wolf
and
story.
so after like stabbing a guy in the eye, which also rhymes, John he goes back over to where Leslie is, and just as they're trying to work out what they're going to do next, the major and all his special forces guys show up with Lorenzo. They're all wearing like white snow gear, and they've got like white ski masks, and they're all ready to go in and take out these guys in the church. So as all this is going on, we're inside the church with the general and the colonel, and they have one of their security guys like, "Hey, look, we've got a load of special forces guys. They're on the front and sides of the church." So the colonel he springs everybody into action. He instructs them all to remove the magazines from their guns and replace them with
Yeah,
other magazines. So I believe we see them, they have magazines with red sellotape that they take off and replace with magazines with blue ones. So we don't know yet why this is happening, but just as we're kind of pondering it, there's a big shootout, and we get the shootout between the government special forces guys and the army terrorist guys who are in the church. And the army terrorist guys, they even though there's this big shootout going on, none of them seem to get injured in the firefight, and they are all able to escape out the back where they have, some waiting snowmobiles ready to go, so they can all make their escape across the snow and the ice. Another thing I noticed,
yeah.
I guess it's just a plot thing or whatever, but I suppose the colonel must have factored in that about half his team were going to die during this mission, because they just have the exact right amount of snowmobiles for for the people who are escaping the church, like, you know. They just had enough to make it. So John McClane, he kind of notices that nobody's guarding the back, and he tries to tell the major, "Hey, look, they're escaping, and you know they're on." And the major's like, "Oh no, it's okay. We're going to go into the building and get them." So John's like, "Fuck this," and he decides to go after them themselves. He shoots one guy with his Beretta, and he takes a snowmobile, and he gives chase. And in the meantime, the special forces dudes, they surround the church. They go inside, but the terrorists have already left. And they also realize that the place is rigged to blow. So everybody is ordered to get the hell out of there, and the place explodes. And in the meantime, John McClane, he's kind of having limited luck catching up with the guys on the snowmobiles. He manages to shoot one and kill him, and there's a big crash and calamity. And when John McClane makes it over to the body of the guy he got, he notices the submachine gun with the sellotape on the magazine, and when he takes off the magazine and checks it, he realizes there's something wrong here, and we're going to find out shortly just what that is. That there's been possibly some type of switcheroo and some type of rug pulling being going on here. So we kind of see in the aftermath here the major, he's gathering up his troops, and it's like, oh well, you know, it looks like the colonel got away, and well, we tried our best to get him, and maybe look, we can still catch up with him, who knows. We're just gonna have to work out something. And him and his men, they're all kind of in the back of a transport unit, and you know, the major and his men are talking about how they've all been together for so long and they've done so many missions together. And this one guy who's only been transferred onto the team that day is like, "Oh, you guys are really close, and you know, I don't even really know any of you that well, and you know, it's obviously it's like my first day here." And the major's like, "Oh yeah, kid, that's too bad." And the next thing, they just slit the dude's throat because it turns out that these guys are also in on the con, and they've actually been working with the colonel and the drug general this whole time. And it also turns out that those special magazines and the guns that they've been firing at each other, they're actually just full of blanks. So Lorenzo, when John McClane tries to explain what's going on, of course Lorenzo is giving him a load of shit, and he doesn't believe him, and it's like blah blah. And then McClane pretty much opens fire point blank on him with the gun, only for him to realize, you know, oh look, it's not real bullets. By the way, that's a really dangerous thing to do. Even if the
Yeah,
gun's firing
blanks can kill
blanks, you
you.
shouldn't. Yeah, blanks can kill you, and especially at that range, you know. So
It's
yeah,
happened on movie sets.
don't ever
People have
try
died in
that.
real life from blanks.
Yeah, quite recently actually, it's even happened. So yeah, if you kids are watching, don't try the blank prank. It won't work. You could kill somebody. You could unalive somebody with those blanks.
Yeah, forever sleep.
So yeah, it's all getting kind of. This is like the equivalent of the reveal in Die Hard 1 when we realized that the terrorists were only looking for money. Likewise here, these guys, it turns out there's no real big cause or any type of military operation they're choosing to support. Everybody here just wants to make a load of money and basically
They want
retire
Franco
to.
Nero to make some more spaghetti westerns. They're like, get him over here, make some more movies for us.
The plan is they're gonna hop on board a jumbo jet. So we're gonna have the general, we're gonna have the colonel and his men, and we're gonna have the major and his men. All these corrupt military men, they're all gonna go in a big jet together, and they're gonna go to some exotic location where they're gonna be able to live off the rest of their days as mercenaries for hire and drug barons essentially, because this guy's
Yeah.
probably going to set up an operation and have his own private army now, that he's been freed and gotten out of Dodge. So it all appears to be kind of collapsing around the airport and around John McClane. We don't know how he's going to get out of this situation and how we're going to be able to bring these guys to justice, because it looks like they're about to make their way and make their way out of there and escape the authorities.
I'll get Sipwitz on the case. He'll solve it. It's got 100% success rate.
But yeah, so he Lorenzo, after being humbled by John and the blanks, he's like, okay, fuck it, I believe you now, even though he should have really believed them right from the get go.
Yeah, sure. Listen to
So
it.
he's like,
I got the
look,
start.
I'm gonna just give you any help you need now, which is what I should have offered you to begin with. We also see around this time that because the slime bag that is Thornburg has been on to the people on the news station, they're now broadcasting the story across the board, and people in the airport are beginning to see on TV that there's, you know, a terrorist situation at the airport and that there's still planes in the air that could crash because they're running out of fuel. And this causes a major panic, and you know, people running around and trampling all over each other, and it's just
Yeah, it
causing
looks like
total
a Dawn of
chaos
the
in the
Dead
airport.
situation. People just scrambling in every direction.
And Lorenzo's like, don't worry, McLean, you know, we'll get you to where you need to go. And I've got my top guy, he's going to help you here. And it turns out like the top guy is the dude's brother from earlier on, just that asshole cop. He gives
Gave him
McLean
a
a big
ticket.
smile, big Merry Christmas smile on his douchebag face that you'd love to punch. And yeah, their help consists of literally the three of them getting into a car together and driving a few meters before they just crash into another fucking car. And McLean has to get out and walk anyway. So after finally convincing the top guy to give him the help he needs, he just totally fucks it up and gets him into a traffic jam instead, you know? So McLean, he's going to have to do some more quick thinking now and work out another way to get to the runway before these dickheads manage to escape. So yeah, fun times ahead for sure.
Yeah, got the old scumbag on the. Yeah, oh, can't breathe. It's so bloody hot here today. That's it.
On
The old
the
scumbag
airplane.
on the airplane, and it's creating this mass panic and traffic jams and more problems, and they're going to still have to figure out what the hell can we possibly do because the bad guys are getting away, and they haven't given us control back of these planes or anything to do anything useful.
You know, the way things are, there's no way John's going to be able to make it to that runway in time. However, thankfully, or luckily, he comes across the reporter lady again, and she's still all downtrodden about not getting any interviews and stuff. And John's like, look, give me a ride on that helicopter, your news helicopter. You're going to see a load of action. You're going to get a story. You're going to get an interview. You're going to get everything you're looking for right now. Just give me a
The old
ride in that
lady with a taser.
helicopter. Yeah, he just wants to go to the runway. He just needs to get there. And yes, so as that's happening, we also see that the general and the colonel are being greeted by the major. I'm throwing out all these army ranks like I know what I'm talking about, but it is their ranks. And they're all kind of laughing among each other and delighted that they've hatched this plan and they're all about to escape together. And then we cut back to Holly's plane, and you know she's getting more than sick about what's going on with Thornburg and his bullshit. So she decides to borrow the taser off the old lady and take matters into her own hands. And Mr. Thornburg is going to be in for a shocking series of events, no pun intended. So the taser is going to be put to good use. So John McClane, he's on his way. He's in the helicopter. He's making his way to the runway just as all our bad guys are boarding the plane and preparing to take off. And it looks like we're going to have or it looks like it's getting pretty close that they're going to make their escape. And not only that, there's also the big problem that the plane that Holly is on is now down to fumes. They are literally going to just be ready to fucking fall out of the sky at any time, and we still have no radio communication. So John, he makes it as far as the plane. He's actually able to get off the helicopter and get onto the wing of the plane, which is some real action movie hero,
Yeah,
last action hero style stuff
cool.
going on. And we get some nice bit of combat, actually, some on the outside of the plane combat between John and the colonel, and we get to see some of the colonel's kung fu action, you know. He's not naked this time though, you know, so it's not as cool. But yeah, he beats the living piss out of John. The only good thing though that happens here is that while all this fighting and action is going on, there is some damage done to the fuel tank on the jet, which causes all the fuel to spill out. So poor John, he gets knocked from the wing and knocked off the plane and onto the runway, which looks incredibly painful. But he is going to
He
have
already
the
got shot
last
earlier,
laugh.
didn't he? Because he was bleeding and that.
He did. He got shot, and I think it was also a misfire that broke the fuel thing as well, which caused the leak. So he's gotten pretty fucked up. He's lying on the runway, and he notices that there's this trail of fuel leaving the plane as it's setting down the runway. So he takes out his lighter and he does the line. He's like, "You guy, motherfucker." And he drops the lighter on the trail of fuel, and we get this great shot of the flame traveling up the trail, catches up with the plane, hits the engine, big boom. We get to see all the military guys getting blown to kingdom come. Also, as a result of this explosion and the way the fuel had kind of dispersed along the runway, it actually ends up making a nice little light pattern that the other planes are then
Yeah,
able to
lights up
use
the
to,
runway.
to follow the flames in and guide their way down to the ground. So Holly's plane, it's able to land, a little bit of a bumpy landing, but they still make it. She gets off. We get the big reunion, all very reminiscent of the first movie at the end after all the shenanigans had went down, and even Lorenzo is smiling and happy and not grumpy, and we get the happy ending with John hugging Holly, and once again, this like I don't want to be like a chauvinist or a sexist or anything, but I can't believe this fucking woman still went ahead and divorced her husband after twice now.
Yeah.
He saved her fucking ass. Now, for all I know, John McClane, maybe he's an awful husband, maybe he's a boozer and an abuser, who knows? But my God, he must have been pretty bad to get divorced after doing all this for her.
I get the sense like I don't know how much time passes between Die Hard 2 and 3, but I guess it's meant for like later 90s and Die Hard 3 that it's like they've probably drifted apart post these events and whatever anyway. And, I get the sense that like, maybe then after these films, before the third one, maybe he did start boozing up or not turn up to work or who knows, or post-traumatic stress or whatever that shit.
Maybe in between this movie and Die Hard 3, there was actually another incident that happened at Christmas involving
Yeah.
Holly McClane. And this time John was just like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm not doing it this year, love. Sorry. I'm just not interested. And that was the beginning of the end of the marriage right there. He just got lazy
Like
one
if
Christmas.
these kind of things happen twice around Christmas, you go, oh, bad luck. Then, like, I mean, the third one's in New York, not so much a Christmas thing, but if something happened a third time round, you'd be go like, it's not you, it's me. Like maybe you've got a curse. Let's go separate ways.
Yeah, and look, I believe it's even a line earlier on in the film. He's like, how the fuck can the same shit happen to me twice? Like he even says it, so they do acknowledge it on screen that it's quite the fantastical set of circumstances to find yourself in a situation like this. But overall, I have to say, as far as sequels go, like I'm a big fan of Die Hard 2. Like I don't love it anywhere as near as much as the first movie. Like I adore the first movie, but it's still a really good sequel. And I think Die Hard with a Vengeance is a really good sequel as well. I hope we do get a chance to cover it someday.
Yeah, I
Um,
really enjoy that film. Like
I don't,
it's unlike Terminator and Aliens, Die Hard had three good films before it went off the rails into the other rubbish ones.
yeah, and yeah, because I'd be willing to draw the line at Die Hard with a Vengeance. We don't need to be going into Die Hard 4.0 and all that other bullshit that came along afterwards. So unless you just want to do a roundup of the bad sequels, we could put them all into one show maybe one day. We could call it the shitty sequel extravaganza.
Yeah, I got a
Shitty
couple
sequel palooza.
couple of theme specials next year where we'll do some like roundtable ones of like dodgy sequels to good films, so we can like keep bookmark those and make a list of various ones, and we can definitely circle back around.
But,
I do
folks,
like
where
this.
we are at the moment.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
go ahead there.
I was just going to say this one was directed by Rennie Harlan. My other two favorites, he directed Lonkus Goodnight and The Midnight Meat Train, the Clive Barker one.
That's right. And I think he's still, or at least until recently, he was still doing action movies. I think he did one with John Cena a few years ago as well. So he's still...
he's done some like notable films in the 80s and 90s, and he's one of those workman guys who's continued to make stuff, but it's, I guess, wherever the paycheck is at the time. Because he's got good stuff. He's got Cutthroat Island and all kinds of other ones he was known for. And then he's got other ones that are just sort of forgettable.
So on the day that we are recording this, it is the 21st of December. So we're only a few days out here from Christmas, folks. So when you see us again, it will be after Christmas when we do our next show. So I suppose it is a good time to wish our viewers and listeners a very happy, Merry Christmas, or whatever it is they celebrate. If they celebrate
Very
it all,
die-hard Christmas.
Just have a nice time. Watch something good. Maybe you've gotten some new toys. Maybe
Watch
you're just
Planes,
chilling
Trains,
with the family.
Home Alone.
But yeah, we'll be back. We'll be back after Christmas with more shows and more good stuff. We've been naughty boys, run Santa's naughty list, but he's still given us permission to continue on with the show.
Yeah, the network's overruled Santa, so sorry, Santa.
Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed our Die Hard 2 discussion. Like I said, it's a wordy sequel. Definitely better than Home Alone 2 as far as Christmas sequels go. So it's always going to have that going for it.
Well, it always blends together those American movies. There's so many American holiday movies. Sometimes they're Christmas, sometimes they're Thanksgiving. But to me, it's so close together. They're all pretty interchangeable in what they're going on about anyway. But yeah, I love Die Hard 2. It's one of those films like Lethal Weapons or Terminators. Every couple of years, I rewatch them again. And I never really get bored of them. It's good fun.
Yeah, rewatch it again anytime. Great fun. Lots of violence, lots of cursing, people smoking cigarettes. It's pretty much everything I enjoy about movies.
Yeah, don't go for the alternative cut. Die Hard 2, Fly Harder with old Leslie and Leslie there. That one's probably best avoided.
Yeah, Leslie and Leslie, what a team.
Unstoppable.
Fly hard with a vengeance.
Yeah, thanks for checking out the show. We'll be back again next time with some more shenanigans.
See you later, folks, and a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Catch you later.